Hi and welcome here to this tutorial. In today's tutorial I'm gonna be making this poncho for kids. This is a size 6 to 8 and all the sizes are calculated in the pattern that you purchase either on the book or on Etsy. For this pattern here and for this size all the way to this size you can also use a Jamit 44 or even a Sentro 40, okay? And a Sentro 48 and an ADDI 46. All these machines you can use for this tutorial. And so for this tutorial you're gonna need also a hook, 4.5 millimeters hook. And if you are knitting the ribbing, you can use a 5 millimeters knitting needles as well, okay? You're gonna need circular knitting needles and circular knitting needles here as well. You could probably go away with using the same knitting needles for the entire pattern, okay? Even though this is a short wire, for this would be good, okay? But if you are making crochet, you only need a 4.5 millimeters hook. I used my bottoms here, they have 28 millimeters, but you could be using from 25 millimeters all the way to 3, they would fit as well. 3 would probably be too big, since these ones I think they have the perfect size for it. You need 6 of them, I used wood ones. You're also gonna need 3 colors of yarn and 100 grams of each color for all sizes, okay? You don't need more than 2 yarn skins for this. I'm using a worsted weight yarn that's 200 meters and 100 grams. It's specified in the pattern which options you have to swap, because this is a Brazilian brand, but it is specified in the pattern. You can swap for the same weight of yarn. You could also use double knit weight yarn, size 3 yarn, okay? The gauge doesn't change much because the number of rows for the gauge is pretty similar, okay? Other than that, that's about it, guys. The sizes in the pattern, they are made all the way from here to here. So if you are looking to compare to your child's clothes, just compare to the full length of it. It's not the panel size, it's the actual size with the ribbing as well. And this pattern, what's useful about this pattern is that if you need more width on your poncho, you can keep making this ribbing a little longer to make it more wide, okay? That's why I like to use this style of ribbing. This crochet ribbing, you can keep making the rows. The only thing I would say is that if you keep making rows to make it wider, just make sure you make the bottom cases on the row before the last one, okay? Otherwise your buttons will be more on the inside and the width is not gonna really change, okay? The color as well, you have this option here. I'm going to explain along the way. You can do it like this, or you can put it in like that and just seam on the inside as well. That's another option. And it will look just like this. I like this way because I think it protects the neck on winter days, but it's up to you. So let's get started, guys, and I'll explain the whole process for you. So to start this kids poncho pattern, I'm going to make 2 panels, one for the front and one for the back. This here is the back panel that I already made. Once you finish the back panel, what you can do is compare to one of your child's clothes and see if the length is right, okay? If it's not right, just undo this one, because this is the easiest part of this poncho to make, and then just remade with a few more even stitches or rows if you need, okay? After you got this size right for the back panels, and remember we're gonna have a ribbing on the side, so the width is gonna be a little bigger. We are going to be making the front panel. Now for the number of rows that you make for each color, if you are making with 3 colors, All you have to do is divide the total number of rows by 3. If there's a mismatch, just make 1 or 2 extra stitches in one of them, okay? If the number is not divided, it's not possible to divide the total number by 3. If you want to divide by 2, just get the total number of rows and divide by 2. Okay, so I'm going to start with this color here, but a little bit of waste yarn on the beginning, so it's easier to bind off later. Always with a contrasting color, so you can see the stitches for just easy binding off. I always keep the waste yarn in a few balls, just like this. So when I need, I have them available for the next project. I'm going to start on the needle number 1, right next to the white one. And if you are using your ADDI knitting machine, start on the black needle, first black needle. And then I'm going to cast on 35 stitches from here. So just stop on needle 35, and again this number will change depending of the size you are making. Just refer to the table to see what's the best size, and then number for you of stitches for the panels, okay? It's all written there for all ages, so just choose the one you think it will fit your child best. And then from here, just place the yarn underneath this lip here and into the yarn guide so you can start the next row. I'll be making 4 rows with this waste yarn here. Again, make sure it goes underneath here, and then you can make your way back. So I finished my 4 rows here. To change the color, what I'm going to do is just remove the waste yarn, put the remaining yarn in, and then change to my first color, which is this one. I'm going to, I don't need a long tail to bind off, because I'm going to bind off when I make crochet on the all around it. Just place your newbie yarn in, just with enough long tail to hide behind the work, and then you can start making the rows. The first stitch is gonna be just like that. It's just gonna go inside the needle, just like this. And one thing I forgot is just to turn my row counter on, make sure it reads the first row, and then start making the rows. So prior to that, you already calculated how many rows you need for each colors, depending of the size you are making. I'm making 28 rows for each one of my colors, okay? And I'm making a size 6 for kids, 6 to 7, and so I'm making 28 rows before I change to the next color now. Make sure you pull on the beginning rows here, and also when you're making panels, make sure the first stitch is way right down on the bottom of the first needle before you start working the row. So now guys, I'm going to be making all these rows here, the same I did for the other panel. And then when I reach this top part here, I'm going to show you how to work on the shoulders, because for the shoulders, I'm going to be making a few extra rows here, just so it goes around on top of the shoulder, and as well opens up a bigger space here for the head. Otherwise you won't have enough space for the head if you make both panels straight, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and do this, and then I'll come back with you on the last row just to show you how to make the shoulders. And now that I already made my 84 rows for this size, What I'm going to do first, I'm going to count 10 stitches this way. And then I'm going to count 10 stitches this way. 10. And also place a marker here. These stitches are gonna change for depending of the size you are making, so refer to that table. And then now what we're going to do is we're gonna make these first 10 stitches with this same yarn attached. So I've made 10 stitches, and then I'm going to remove this yarn, and I'm going to be making from one marker to the next marker without the yarn, okay, to release the stitches out of the needle so it can cast off. Okay, and here make sure this stitch is down and stop here, otherwise if you go back the other way you're gonna drop these stitches here, okay? So with a tapestry needle and some contrasting color of yarn, we're going to just make sure these stitches are safe so we can use these live stitches to make our turtleneck after. And then now you can make your way back. Oops, I dropped this stitch. Now, let's quickly fix this dropped stitch. I'm going to grab with a hook, pull it, and then pull again. Once I did that, I'm gonna put inside the needle, make sure the next one doesn't drop, and then grab the two last stitches. Okay, and then what we're going to do now, we're going to make 10 rows from 9 rows from here because we already made one, and then we're going to be making 10 rows here after, okay? So I'm going to be making one side first, just because it's easier this way. I'm going to be making 10 rows here now, okay? So from 84 to 94 in my row counter. So this is just a small panel, really. So I'm going to finish these 10 rows and then I'll come back with you just to show you how to bind off and everything and how to start the other side. Once I finish that 10 rows for the shoulders here, I'm going to remove this yarn and make a full row without the yarn. Because I'm going to be using this yarn to seam the shoulder after, I'm going to leave a little bit of a longer tail. It doesn't need to be very long because this seaming is only for 10 stitches here. And then right after I did that, I'm going to actually remove these stitches here with another contrasting color of yarn. It doesn't need to be much because it's only a few stitches. Once they are here, they are secured and ready to be seamed with the Kitchener stitch on the top of that one. And then grab the yarn and we're gonna put this yarn right in front of this first stitch and then just start making the row. I'm going to count manually here, but just because it's only 10 rows, so 1, 2, 3, 4. So I'll make 10 rows here, and then I'm going to bind off the exactly same way that I did on this side here. Now after we finished both pieces, that's what we're going to have. They have exactly the same size. And now what I'm going to do before I start seaming on the shoulders is just make a knot. With these tails here. And then I'm going to hide these tails with the crochet after. So I'm just gonna leave them like this. And here, because this is a live stitch, just make sure you don't make the knot too tight, okay? It's just really a knot with a crochet hook. And then now just grab put them like this. And then with a tapestry needle, we are going to use the Kitchener stitches to join both shoulders this way. In the book, if you bought, or in the pattern, there's an explanation for this if you get a little lost. So I'm going to, from there, I'm going to put the needle through these 2 first stitches here. And then remove this yarn. Make the tail smaller on this side so it's easier. And also here. And then from there, from that side, I'm going to go again through this first stitch here. And then the second one this way. And then I'm really just gonna repeat this, going through every stitch twice. Just make sure you grab the last loop you just made the stitch and then the very next loop. And then the same here, if you leave this yarn until you make the next stitch, it's easier to spot where you have to put the needle through, okay? And then remove it once you're done with that stitch. Okay, so I'm going to be doing this on both shoulders. And then I will leave the remaining stitches open here on the front and on the back, okay? To make the turtleneck after. So I'll just make them all and then I'll come back with you to show you how to do the rest. And then once you finish, that's how it's going to look like. As you can see, you can't pull too much this stitch. You have to make sure it's the exact size of the other stitches. And then when you're gonna do here to finish, just make a knot with both tails. I like to hide them with the first row of single crochets that I'll be making later, okay? And then just make the same way on the other side as well. Now here, for this part here, what's gonna happen is, if you have a kid that has a slightly bigger head, and you know that, you can keep making these rows here until you have a bigger space here. So this one's just for a normal head, but if you need a bigger space, that's how you do it. So you're gonna have a few more rows, and that way a wider space on the neck. And this is valid for most of the clothing, okay? You can just make this a little longer on the shoulders. So now I'm going to join the next one, and then I'll come back with you to work the turtleneck and then finish with the ribbing around it. Now this is after seamed. That's the hole we have for the head. But before we make the neck, I would like to make the ribbing around it, only because I want to get rid of this waste yarn. And so there's no order for this, but you can make the same way that I did if you prefer. I'm just going to attach the same color of the first row here. Just make a knot. And then I'm going to bind off all the stitches. So I'm going to be making one slip stitch in this first one, and then one slip stitch with the first and the second one, this way. So I'm going to repeat this all the way to the other side, and then I'll start making the ribbing on this part here. And then after you finish this row, just remove the waste yarn. And so after this row here, I'm going to be making a short ribbing on the bottom. And this is only because, as you can see, it's curling. So I'm going to, you can bind off that and hide. Make 2 chains to turn the work. And then I'm going to be working 1 double crochet in every stitch, all the way to the other side. Just 1 double crochet in every finished crochet knitted stitch. Now if you want to make a knit ribbing, it's very easy as well. All you have to do is, before you remove the waste yarn, you put the straight needles through each one of the loops here. Once you finish with a straight or a circular knitting needle, you're gonna use a 5mm one as well to match with the size of the rest. And then once you put all this in the needles through inside all the way to the other side, you remove the waste yarn as well. And then you can make a 1x1 ribbing. So you're gonna turn the work and make 1 knitted stitch and 1 purl stitch on the back, and then turn and make these rows for as long as you want. I would, if it was knitting, I would make around 5 to 6 rows, because this is crochet. I'm only gonna make 3 or 4 rows of these. Okay, so this is the first one. I'm gonna go all the way to the other side, and then I'm gonna be showing you the next row after this. I finished with this first row, and then I'm going to make 2 chains, turn the work, and you can use this ribbing for every project in the book, or for every project that you purchase with me on Etsy as well. And then here I'm going to be making another double crochet on the next stitch, and on the very next one I'm going to be making front pole double crochet this way. So 1, 2 double crochets, and then go through the back of the pole of the next stitch, and then just pull the yarn this way. And just repeat this row as well. This is a ribbing that you very easy to make, and I like this ribbing other than the other one that goes this way. You probably know it's a half double crochet ribbing that goes this way. I prefer this because it looks like a ribbing as well, and then you can, you know, you can make it longer if you want, if you decide halfway. The other one, because you start with a few number of chains, you can't really grow it bigger after that, so that's why I like this one. And then on this side, after I turned, I'm going to do the opposite way. So I'm going to back post this way here, so the stitch looks exactly the same. So that's back post double crochet. and it's gonna look exactly the same stitch. And then double crochet 1, double crochet 2, and then back post on the opposite side. So these are the 2 rows you have to keep making if you want your ribbing a little longer as well. And this is how it's going to look like. So I'm gonna keep making this. I'm gonna make just this row. So after this I'll be making an extra row with only half double crochets because this ribbing tends to curl a bit, and as well so I finish the ribbing on the right side of the knitting and the crochet as well. And then after this row, the 3rd row, we're gonna chain 1. This is our ribbing, and then I'm going to have double crochet all on the bottom. You can have double crochet here as well. You can front post this last one if you want, or if you don't, you can just have double crochet. So this is how it's gonna look like. I'm going to repeat this on the other side as well, and then I'll come back with you to show you how to make the bottom cases on the side and how to make the side ribbing after this. Now after I finish the last ribbing row on the bottom, I'm going to just start working with the same color to the sides, and I'm going to be making 2 chains. Now for this part of the ribbing here, I'm going to be making 1 stitch, 2 stitches to every row here to the side. So 1 in the middle and 1 here. And then 1 in the middle, 1 here. Now here, if you are using knitting instead, what you do is you pick up a stitch like this and then you just put on the needle. You would pick up the same number of stitches that I have here in crochet, the same way. And then this very next one, I'm going to be making my first double crochet. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make crochet where I have the knitted stitches. So I'm going to be making 1, 2, then I can hide this tail as well, and I'm going to skip 1. So 1, 2, and then skip 1. Skip 1. And you do the same thing if you're picking up stitches with your circular knitting needle. So I'm going to keep making all the way to the other side here, okay? And then on the second row only we are going to be making the holes for the bottoms. But what I thought about doing is I'm going to put 1 wooden bottom here and 1 here, maybe 1 on the bottom. But you have to choose the places, and if you want to place markers, I'm not placing markers because I know I want them here in the same line of the colors. But if you do want in different places, just make sure they are evenly separated. And but we are going to do this on the next row, okay? Now after I finish this first row, this is how it's going to look like. I'm going to just cut this yarn here, hide the tail later, because I'm always gonna be working on the right side from here. So facing right, we're going to start the second row. I'm going to follow the same sequence here for the crochet, which I think is gonna look nice. And so the second row that I'm going to do, it's just gonna be a repetition of the second row of this one here, okay? Attach the yarn in this first chain, second chain on the beginning. Make a slip stitch on the back and pull it through. And then I'm going to chain 1, 2, 3 to start the row this time. And then I'm going to double crochet 1, and then after that I'm going to front post double crochet. I really like to use this ribbing because it looks so nice at the end with the color changes. You're gonna see when we finish this. Now here we have to make add the bottoms as well. I want to add 6, so I'm going to add 1 here, 1 here, and 1 here. And then when making the bottom case for the other side, I made for this one already, just to make sure it's gonna work. And then when you reach the same place on the other side, just make the case again. The way I did was just a chain, and then I skipped a stitch underneath and made a double crochet. Now what you have to do here is to follow the pattern. So I would have to make a front post double crochet, a double crochet, and another double crochet. Instead of this second double crochet, I made the chain, so I'm just going to make a front post again. It's just follow the pattern really, but when you have the chain, count as a stitch. So this is how it's gonna look like. On the next row, I'm just going to make a stitch on top here. Fit the bottom that I chose, which is this one. You would fit a bigger bottom, that's why you don't really need to make much bigger case than this one. So I'll keep making this row, and then I'm going to be making the next row. And what is good about this pattern is if you need more width for your kid, you can keep making these rows and just make sure the bottom cases you make only on the row before the last one, okay? So they're not too much on the inside of the piece, okay? So this is how this looks like after I finished both sides. I only have to attach the bottoms here on the other side, so they come this way through. And now I'm going to attach the yarn here in one of the sides, this way. Just make a knot, slip knot on the back, pull it through, and make a chain. And then here I'm going to be making this stitch here. I'm going to single crochet on the around the sides, always on the last stitch available. Just make sure if there are any holes here, just try to hide them the best way you can. And then from here, on these stitches here, pull this yarn tail, and then through these stitches here, I'll be making slip stitches. Just like we made on the bottom to remove the waste yarn. So around here, only because we need space for the neck, I'm going to be making 1 stitch to each row around the sides and a slip stitch in this first row to bind off the stitches. Now be repeating this through this entire row here before I start making the ribbing. I'll come back with you to show the ribbing. Now at this point here, after the first row, and one thing I wanted to say, the reason why I don't say the number of stitches I have on the sides here is because I don't really count them, because you're gonna have the same amount of stitches if you are skipping one every 3 rows, okay? And the same happens here, so point here, make a fitting test, see if it fits on the head, and then before you start making the next row, okay? So here this row, I'm going to finish it off with a slip stitch to go to the next row. And then on the next row, I'm going to chain 2, and then I'm going to be making 1 double crochet in each stitch. Just like we made before, all the rows are going to be the same. But for this part here, I want you to try it on every few rows just to make sure it still fits the head through. Because if it doesn't, in case it doesn't fit, all you have to do is make a few more stitches, extra stitches on the sides, and just use a bigger hook so the yarn can stretch a little more, and that way you're gonna have a more elastic neck. So I'm going to keep making this row here until I'm back on the beginning, and then I'll quickly show you the next row, but it's just the same rows we made here, but we're gonna be working on the round, okay? And then here, this first row, I'm going to make a slip stitch into that first stitch, chain 2, and double crochet in this second stitch. And then from here, I'm going to just repeat that row until I have a turtleneck. So just repeat the same row we made before for the ribbing. So I'm going to be making this row until it folds this way, because we're making a turtleneck. And if you want to make it shorter, just make less rows, okay? Then I'll come back with you. So guys, this is the result after making the turtleneck. I actually decided to just leave like this. If you want this to be a turtleneck and just fold it like this, you need to work this entire ribbing facing the wrong side of your work, which means going this way, okay? Because otherwise you're gonna fold it and the inside's gonna show and not this part here. So it's the same work, you just have to work the other way, facing, instead of work facing this way, you work the crochet facing this way the whole time, or work inside. Now to place the bottoms, I bought here, they are very large. Actually I bought it wrong, they are 28 millimeters. I think they are a little too big. I think the perfect size would probably be 20 millimeters or 2 centimeters in diameter. But all you have to do is really place here, because I placed the holes right on the edge of the color change, so just place where they're supposed to go. That's how I do it. Choose the color you prefer as well. I prefer the darker color just to contrast with the bottom. And then put it through the holes. Make sure again you are seaming on the right place and the holes right on top of it. That hole will fit even a 3 centimeters bottom. So, and then just seam it this way. They're very easy to seam. Just make sure when you put this through, don't go all the way to the other side, otherwise your seaming will show on the other side, on the other color. And this is how this is going to look like. gonna be very tight, which is good because that way it won't open. I'm just going to add the last buttons. I also added a little tag here that I think is really nice. And then I'll come back just with the final project to show you how it looks like. I think this would fit a 6 to 8 years old kid, okay? So, but as well, I'm going to leave all the sizes on a table inside the pattern. So before you start this pattern, you make sure you look at the sizes first and then refer to the number of stitches for that size that you think is the most similar to your child's clothes, okay? Sometimes you don't even have to go through the sizes listed, but the measurements listed for your kid, okay? So this is our tutorial for today. I hope you enjoyed the book, and if you didn't purchase the book, I hope you enjoyed this Etsy pattern. Make sure you leave me your review wherever you got this pattern from, either Amazon or Etsy. It's really important for my work as well. And I hope you enjoyed and this was helpful for you. Thank you all for watching. Please subscribe to my channel as well. I have a lot of free tutorials there too. And I see you soon. Bye.